making that jump into the world of sales, having already been in your career, not really having the network that people who have been in the world of sales. Where was your head at with playing out the risk factor in that?
I was much more interested in what was possible, and I just had enough self-belief that I was going to make it work. When you start in sales, you suck. That's just how it is. Everybody sucks when they first start. And the first 6 months of sales, you'll work the hardest you've ever worked for the least amount of money. And that's where most people give up. Most people can't get over that initial hump to build your pipeline, to build your skills, to build your clientele. And that is a big mistake, because if you can just stick it out, man, it's very, very fruitful.
This is the Take a Step podcast, where we equip driven individuals to discover and start living according to their God-given purpose. Wherever you find yourself on your growth journey, let's take a step. Travis, welcome to the Take a Step podcast. Excited to finally get you on the show.
Yeah, Josh, I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of kick us off just by opening up to you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the Take a Step community, however you see fit.
Yeah, I am a 35-year-old business guy. I am part-time on the internet, but full-time sales professional, enterprise sales. I've been in sales for about 6 years now. Started my corporate career in the accounting department and realized it wasn't quite for me, so kind of navigated through that. But how we got introduced, Josh, is through my online presence. So kind of my passion project, side hustle, whatever you want to call it. I also run a YouTube channel that's evolved over the years. It's been up and running for about a decade now, believe it or not. And started as just workouts, moved into like food and food challenges. And now it's mostly, fitness, lifestyle, family. So it's been fun. It's been a great outlet for me, aside from my professional career.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's kind of the way we got connected. Is I've been following along with what you're doing for the past. I probably came across your content maybe a year and a half ago. And what resonated so much with me about it is how it kind of goes against the grain of the stereotypical content creator influencer vibe, where they're showing off the lifestyle that doesn't apply to the everyday guy. So yeah. And I love your content, is because it seems like there's a very intentional approach on making it the holistic approach of the person that has the family, that has a job, that has an everyday schedule that they're trying to apply to, and it kind of providing that insider's look into creating content around that. So is there, from kind of how your channel's evolved over the years, and we can go back in a little bit on, how it started, but for right now, is there an intentional approach behind trying to make it apply and, stick out to the person that lives the normal life, quote unquote?
Definitely. I try to be kind of filling the gap of what I wanted on YouTube, because I could never relate with the full-time influencer, which is really all that's out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a career in itself, but it just wasn't relatable to me. So as I'm watching content, I'm like, that's great. It's entertaining, but there's not a whole lot I can apply to my everyday life. And so that's one of the things that I try to bring to my content. One of my, thoughts is that it's more anti-influencer, right? It's not flashy. It's not extravagant. It's just real life. And it's more so just documenting kind of what I've learned throughout the process. And I think sometimes that gets lost, because 90% of people are living a life kind of like you and I, that are working more so in that corporate environment. And I think that resonates.
Yeah, and like that's why it stuck out so much to me, is because it's funny, like I resonated so much, not only with the style of content, but in the message that you had, because I came up in the world of sales. I was in kind of a transition period from careers on what I wanted to do in my sales journey moving forward with a new company. I've always been a huge fitness guy, and I know fitness content is kind of where you started. I think I was probably a year and a half into my marriage. My wife and I just had our first baby 8 weeks ago. So it like everything you put out applies so much to the everyday person like myself. And I say everyday with quote unquote because I kind of try to, embody the idea. And I think I got it from Goggins, the talking about being uncommon amongst uncommon and like living an uncommon life. So I hesitate to say the word normal guy, but
Sure.
you know what I'm saying as far as just kind of like living the everyday life. So it was very cool to kind of see someone putting out content in a very entertaining way that had a lot of great insight for someone in my shoes. So that's something that I kind of clung to. But I went like in looking back and where you started, it started very fitness centered, right?
That was it. Yeah. So I started it. I was in grad school. I was finishing up my MBA, and I was really just looking for an outlet because my circle of friends, like they would go to the gym, they would work out, but I loved it, right? It was like
Yeah.
that was my thing. And I didn't have anyone to really share that with. So I get on YouTube and I'm seeing all of these different channels and people that like are like me in a way, right? They love this lifestyle. And I even see some people that, were kind of in the same stage of life where they're just getting out of college and they're going into the workforce. And I was like, I just want to be part of that community. So I uploaded videos, not being very naive, not knowing much about it. And I'm like, I'm just going to upload workout videos. Maybe I could get 100, 200 people on here and we could just talk about lifting. And that was kind of the goal of it. I
What
didn't
year
know
was
it.
that?
2012.
Okay.
So yeah, I was just getting out of grad school. And I didn't know you could make money on social media. I didn't know that people, and at that time, they really didn't have, a
Yeah.
career on the internet. It was more so just to talk about lifting weights and, with my
Hmm.
meathead buddies.
Yeah. It's the college life.
Yeah, right.
So when
Yeah.
you first started, like what was your whole purpose just to kind of like do something for fun?
Pretty much. Like I needed something because in school, I kind of I treated school as it was like a all day, all night type of thing. I really had to study. I wasn't naturally intelligent, I would say. So I was like, well, when I go to work, if I'm just working 9 to 5, like what am I gonna do from 5 to 10? So
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I gonna fill that gap? And I was a big consumer of YouTube. And that was to this day, that's been one of the biggest takeaways for social media for me because most people just consume, consume, consume. I
Hmm.
wanted to be part of the action. Just like you started a podcast, right? You probably listened to a bunch of podcasts and you're like, I'm going
Yes.
to jump in the game. Like, I wanted to be part of it. I thought it was cool. And it was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. Like, I've made lifelong friendships. I've, of course, created some passive income, which is incredible. I've got this awesome creative outlet for myself. I've got to connect with so many people. So that small decision that I made over a decade ago turned into something awesome.
Yeah. When did you see that it could potentially turn into something? And when you started, obviously you did it for fun, but like, did you think that there was something that it could turn into down the road, or what did it kind of come later where you realized that could be a potential opportunity?
No, I had no clue. Like I said, if I was thinking if I could get like 100 or 200 people to subscribe to my channel and we could talk about working out and powerlifting, that'd be
Yeah.
great. That was like kind of my end goal. And then it got to like 500 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, and I'm thinking like this is a kind of addicting, right? You get really addicted to the growth, the
Hmm.
success, the business behind it, and then that's when it started to evolve into me studying the algorithms and well, what's making channels grow, like how do I attract a wider audience, and for better or for worse that led me down the path ironically of food challenges. Right, so I go from working out to eating massive amounts of food, but I don't know how it started. That like the fitness industry loves food, I think,
Yeah.
because it's part like eating and training, it's just part of it. And so these food challenges became very popular. And that's one of the ways I was actually able to expand my audience was they were hitting the search engines. So like
Hmm.
5,000 calorie challenges or full menu challenges or whatever. And that started really gaining traction. And that was probably the peak of the channel was when I was doing some of these crazy challenges.
Yeah.
In hindsight, not the best thing for my body, but It grew
Yeah,
how
there
I
was. I remember going back in the feed. There's some like 10,000 calorie a day challenges. There's the donut challenges. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Like if
that
you
we're
go to
this.
my
We're
channel and look at like top rated by views, that's like the at the very top. Like the first video that crossed 1 million views was like eating like the rock or something like that.
yeah,
So that's just at that day and age, like what was big on YouTube.
yeah. Yeah, and now like it's funny looking at where it started from fitness content, and now we're talking about family and sales and lifestyle, and it's so funny to see just kind of how as life evolves, what your interests are, so does the content you create, and it's cool to kind of see how that's evolved for you over the time and or over the course of time. But I think the first video I came across was you talking about like day in the life of a everyday sales rep or something like that.
Yeah.
Because sales is something for me, and I hear it through your content as far as like how passionate you are. But you didn't start out in sales, right? You were in accounting, is that right?
Yeah, so I got my MBA and I got my master's of accounting. So I started in the accounting department, and I thought, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I really wanted to get into something more in like the finance world, whether that be stock trading or something. But I grew up in Ohio. Like if you want to get into that, like you got to go to the Northeast, and
Mm,
if you want to be on Wall Street, like you're not going to do it from Cincinnati, Ohio. So ended up in the corporate world, and it was luckily I found a great spot for me because I was able to learn a lot. But I realized fairly quickly accounting was a choice of security.
yep.
It wasn't a choice of passion. I did it because I knew the job was always going to be there, but it wasn't the job that like lit my fire. So thankfully, I had a lot of good guidance and a lot of people that were helping me along the way. And I just started reaching out, asking questions like, what else is out there? And thankfully, the company was very supportive, and I got to kind of go out and see, well, what other options are there? Do I want to be in operations? Do I want to be in supply chain? Maybe, there is a different degree of accounting I'm interested in. Um, but then I was like, well, I got financial goals too. So uh, sales became very, very interesting to me. And mostly because I always, my biggest frustration with accounting was that it didn't matter if I was the best accountant ever or the worst accountant ever, I was going to make the same amount of money.
Yep.
I wanted to be able to dictate my pay.
Mm,
And I wanted to be able at any given time to make more money if needed. And when you're in a straight salary job, there's some pros to that. But also, you've got that number, and that's the number you're going to make throughout that 12-month period, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it
mm,
besides get promoted. But that's a process. So
yeah.
I started to really entertain getting into a sales job, even though that is probably the least likely crossover of all time. There's not too many accountants that go into sales. But thankfully it was a good mesh for me, and it was definitely the best career decision I made from both personal satisfaction, but also from the financial aspect as well. It was a very good choice.
Yeah. So and then like we can go 1,000 different directions on that. One of which is like obviously there's the glamour and the it sounds great on saying yeah I can dictate my pay, which sounds like a positive, but that can also turn into a negative. There's risk associated once you make that step on saying okay like as an accountant that you can like whether you do a great job, like you said, or do a bad job, on the bad days, you're still going to make the same. So it's like you still have that level of security, like you're
Yeah.
saying. But, making that jump into the world of sales, having already been in your career, not really having the network that people who have been in the world of sales in an industry for a long time have, where was your head at with playing out the risk factor in that?
Luckily, at that point in my life, I was 28. I was single, living by myself. So I had the luxury
Mm-hmm.
of not no stress, but my stress was very low because I had a lot of belief in myself.
Mhm.
I looked at it because it was a lot less guaranteed money, a lot less.
Yeah.
And I knew that going into it, but I really focused on the upside. I was much more interested in what was possible from the benefits of it as opposed to, well, what could go wrong. I just had enough self belief that I was going to make it work. I was going to figure it out some way, somehow. And, you know, as when you start in sales, you suck.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Everybody sucks when they first start. And the first 6 months of sales, you'll work the hardest you've ever worked for the least amount of money. And that's where most people give up. Most
Mhm.
people can't get over that initial hump to build your pipeline, to build your skills, to build your clientele. And that is a big mistake because if you can just stick it out, man, it's very, very fruitful. But you do have to be self-motivated. And I don't know if that's something you can teach someone or if that's inherent or
Mhm.
or whatever, but it's always been within me. So thankfully, I think sales was more so just a career that aligned with my natural
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about like withstanding that initial period, especially in the world of sales, because the when you're, laying the bricks, so to speak, or building the foundation, it's kind of hard to measure success at that point because you're doing the nitty gritty of honing in your skills, of building the book of business, of continuing to do the prospecting. And those are building like the foundation, but at a very slow level. But there's compounding returns down the road because of the work you did for so long, if you were willing to withstand it, of your skills pay off, exponentially down the road, rather than, let's just say it takes you that 6 months, maybe even a year to build those skills. You aren't going to see returns from that in that year, but you'll see the returns from that down the road at a much more rapid level, right?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
sales is, it's one of those careers, depending on who you're talking to. Some people think it's like a sexy job where you're golfing all the time and you're quitting by two. Like I legitimately thought I'd be able to work a lot less.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be further from the truth. And other people just look down on it, right? It's like the bottom of the barrel.
That's what I was going to ask. The sliminess of the sales reps.
Yeah, because in a lot of industries, it's true. Like
Hmm.
it's not a very, and depending on where you're at, like everyone has dealt with unethical salespeople. So one of the things I learned and how I really differentiated myself and did very well was there's a difference between being just like a slimy salesperson and a sales professional.
Hmm.
And I know, like from personal experience, especially when I've worked with true sales professionals, it doesn't even feel like a sales transaction. Like it's great. Like I was dealing with a banker and a real estate agent the other day, and I was like, this is awesome. Like I understand you guys are
Yeah.
working on commission, but you guys are adding so much value. I
Yeah.
don't even need to call around. Like you're my person. This is because I've gone through others, and I'm like, okay, I get what's going on here. Um, but yeah, I think that's where a lot of people get into the profession and they don't think about it in the long term because you
Hmm.
can make a little bit of money doing shady, crooked deals in the short term,
Yeah.
but you don't get away with it for very long because in this world, all you have is your reputation.
Hmm.
And it's a very small world out there. And if you start to burn people, it's going to catch up with you. So if you want to have a long career, you've got to do it the right way, even if it might not mean initial payoff.
Yeah. And that goes. One thing I always say when talking to people about sales who are thinking about getting into sales or just, my evolution in my career of sales is, you have to believe in your product that you're selling. Cause like if you don't, then that's when it gets into the shadiness of trying to do the convincing, of trying to do something to someone rather than do something for someone. I heard that quote in sales. Sales is something you do for someone, not something you do to someone.
Yeah.
But like that, another great mindset I've heard on sales to approach it to kind of get away from that sliminess, the sleaziness that you see in the industry is being able to approach it with the mindset of if I truly believe in my product, if I truly believe that I am going to serve this person with value, then I need to see that like as my obligation. I feel obligated to where if I don't have the right approach to get this person to buy, then I'm doing them a disservice, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Grant Cardone, to be honest, as a person. But the first sales book I ever read, and I think one of the best books I've ever read, is called Sell or Be Sold.
Yep.
And he talks a lot about that, where if you're not sold on your own product and your own offering, essentially it's just not going to work. If you wouldn't buy it yourself, then there's no way you're going to be successful in selling it. And that is one of the things I looked at as I was making that transition. It had to be something that I truly believed in and I truly aligned with. And that's why I've never switched industries. I've been in the same industry the whole time. It's something I'm passionate about. And for me, I find at this stage in my career, because, it's kind of, you start out, at least I started out as like selling to current customers, and then you get promoted into selling to new accounts, and then you get promoted into higher levels. So it's not as transactional sales anymore. Now you're working with the C-suite. And at this point, I'm more of like, I would say just a business professional. Of course, there's a sales element, but you're talking with a lot higher level people. You're solving problems, and it's like a big puzzle. It's really fun, and I look forward to going to work every day because it's never the same. There's not a whole lot of monotony in this job and in this world, and it becomes one of those things that it's kind of cliche to say, but it doesn't really feel like a job when you get to talk about something you truly enjoy and you get to solve other people's problems.
Yeah, that's very true. So what would you say, like to someone who's considering getting into sales for the first time, that sees it as this, that kind of sees it from the glamour perspective of like, oh, like it's this way to get in, make a lot of money, have this great schedule, have all the time margin. What would you say to someone as far as just like as a mindset to have in the way they approach getting into sales as an entry level position?
The one thing I always tell people is the hardest sale you're ever going to make is getting your first sales job. Like I didn't just decide I'm going to move from accounting to sales. Like it took me 2 years of convincing people that I was made for this. Like I could do this. So people get very discouraged because they can't get an entry level sales job. Well, that's part of it. A lot of times people won't give you an interview because they're testing you. Like they want to see how much you're willing to fight for it. Like
what your follow-up looks like, what your persistence looks like, how you're marketing yourself, all that.
Yeah, like it's a game when they don't answer your email, right? It's a game when they don't answer your phone call. That a lot of people, I didn't know. Like when I first started, I was like, oh, the guy, he must not be interested. He didn't answer my email. Well, that's part of you're interviewing before you interview. So I think that keeping that in mind, and also not just getting in with the expectation that, yes, seasoned sales professionals make a lot of money, but you got to be okay that first year sucking at your job and not making a lot of money. And I think people are in such a rush, especially like when I started, I was in my 20s. Like, what did I need to make a whole lot of money for? It was just me. I had no obligations. I think if people would just be a little bit more patient and focus on just getting a foot in the door in an industry they're interested in, and then working their way through it and acquiring the skill set. That's the great part about working for organizations, is that people love to share. Like if you find someone that's super successful, they love to talk about it. And all you have to do is align and attach yourself with those people that have already had success, and you're getting this mentorship. And what I found, because a lot of people to this day reach out to me and they want to benchmark and talk about best practices, and 99% of people that I talk to, they don't apply it.
Yeah.
But if you're just that 1% or that 5% of people that will actually internalize, apply what you've learned, sales is not, like that's one of the reasons I got into the role. It's not rocket science. It's not, I'm not smart enough to be a lawyer or a doctor. But sales is something that everybody can do if they just put in the effort and the time.
Yeah. I think what comes to mind with that is being coachable. If you have the, are willing to go out, put yourself out there, do the work, not being afraid of failing, and can learn from your mistakes, have someone give you the constructive criticism, and then go back. And like you said, not only say, okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but actually go and apply what they're saying, and
Yeah.
make the adjustments on the fly. Then there's a huge ceiling for you in the sales world.
I mean, humility is huge. I'm sure you've read that book, Ego is the Enemy.
Yep.
Um, it's most people don't realize in sales, most of your day is just getting kicked in the mouth and being told no.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like that. Like a lot of people have this more of a chip on their shoulder, or they don't like to be it. I don't know if it's a position of power or whatever it is, but like if you're a salesperson and you walk into a building, you're viewed as scum.
Yeah.
And you know, you got to be okay with that. That's,
Mm-hmm.
if your ego is too big and it doesn't allow you to take rejection day after day, call after call, it might not be the right job for you.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into where I wanted to lead into this, as far as this conversation is, I, from my experience in the sales world, there has been so much just from the mindset and the approach and like we're talking about with practical application, that correlates with my personal growth, and fitness as well. I think that fitness and sales, I think for me, and just from following your content, I can see a lot of resonance there. It's just like there's certain mindsets and certain, developing the structures and the habits and the routines and putting yourself out there, and it takes consistency. All of these different things play into your personal growth holistically and how you show up, both professionally, at home, to your wife, with your kids. I feel like there's so much that applies from a mental growth perspective that transitions into your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, it's no coincidence. A lot of salespeople are previous athletes, are
Yeah.
gym rats. It's a characteristic in a lot of us, right? I mean, it's not true for everyone, but typically people that are type A, that are systematically driven, that like organization, that are self-disciplined, that applies to a lot of different areas. And a lot of people say the way you do one thing is the way you do all things.
Love that.
And it's true. And that's why you find that a lot of successful salespeople are, very dedicated in other areas of their life, dedicated to their families, dedicated to the gym. And again, that is not to say that, just because you're in sales, you're going to be a great family person or be a gym rat. Because I know some salespeople that are amazing at sales and never been to the gym.
Yeah.
But just, speaking broadly, there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, just from, it's almost like the habit is more developing the habit to have the consistency to be disciplined is more important, that you actually have that to kind of lead to the growth, rather than actually enjoying what you're doing at the time. Sometimes it's painful. Like I see on a lot of your videos, you talk about, I mean, I don't want to be up at 4 a.m. walking into my garage to warm up on the assault bike so that I can start with my front squats on day one. But
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Liking something is not a prerequisite to doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like you become almost like a little crazy in a way, where you look forward to things that suck, and only because that usually the reward is on the other side of
Yep.
the discomfort. And that's awesome, right? And that makes it so rewarding. And I think we see these patterns that we can apply to all these different areas, in all facets of life. And once you start to recognize that pattern, I think you're more open to applying it in other areas, at least from my experience.
Yeah. Have you ever read The Comfort Crisis?
I don't think so. I think it's on my wish list, but I don't believe I've actually read it.
So yeah, I mean, what's funny is I actually haven't read it either, but I've heard so many podcasts on it. I've heard so much. My reading list grows at like 5x the speed at what I can actually read,
Yeah, that's
and
the
that's one
problem.
of those that I hear so many of my buddies talking about. But it's essentially the idea of like we're in a generation that we seek comfort, and all that's going to lead to is more discomfort in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer that like suffering is a necessity for growth. Like, how can we search for the suffering, search for the uncomfortable times that will lead to and mold us into the person that can handle or that can create the comfortable times down the road.
Yeah, that's kind of my philosophy is, I want to retire early. I want to be able to live out my years just watching my kids grow. I'd rather just put in the work and the effort now and hopefully watch those watch those golden years go by with a little bit less responsibility and have enough resources available to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I also think you get to a point where you just get addicted, right?
Yep.
It's like this obsession with the progression, and at some point, like even if it's not in what people consider to be standard work, like you'll find something to latch onto, and you'll put those same systems in place, and you'll want to achieve in those areas as well. So I think it becomes so ingrained in you that you just bring it to whatever it is, being a dad or
Yeah.
volunteering at your church or whatever it is. I think you just kind of bring that same energy everywhere you go.
Yeah. 100%. So speaking of being a dad, what is I know you got a little boy now, Griffin.
Yeah.
And y'all are expecting a new one now. I saw. Congratulations.
Thank you. Number
How,
two is on the way.
how has how I mean, what's been the perspective shift since in the past couple of years of learning how to not only build your career, be a good husband, but also nurture a new human being in the world.
Changes everything.
Yeah.
Changes your entire perspective. You're not doing it for yourself anymore, and you have a whole new fire that's lit underneath of you. But at least for me, it's like everything has changed to how do I give him the best possible life, and thinking through that, having the understanding that I've got to be here and be my best to give him what I want to give him.
Yeah.
Like the thought of me not being here or being able to provide, that's what keeps me up at night. Like my parents both passed early, and I would never want him to ever have to experience that. So you just start to really think about things much differently. And now the decisions that I make are more for him. And I've got to take care of myself. I've got to make sure that I'm in the best possible position to be here as long as possible for him. And man, there's nothing better than being a dad. And I didn't even think I wanted kids. I got married at 30. We weren't really in any rush, but now it's one of those things where I've had a lot of great things happen in life. I've had a lot of good success in a lot of different areas, but nothing compares to being a dad.
Yeah. I'm like I said, we're 8 weeks in with our baby girl, and it's there's so many amazing aspects to the day, like just kind of like being able to look like hold your girl, hold your boy, and have them look at you, and the connection. For me, I see like so much of like God's grace and mercy through that, but at the same time, there is a challenge like no other
Oh,
that I've experienced over the past 2 months, to where I learn something new about myself every day, both good and bad. My wife and I learn something new about our relationship dynamic every day, and it's a challenge, but it's molding us for the better. We know that, but it takes some perseverance right now.
it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I always tell, especially new parents, because I think I was so scared to have a kid because everyone tells you the horror stories.
Yeah,
So, like, I really tried to, at least from my platform, change the narrative and let people know how awesome it is.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
It's only beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard, right? It's but just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
And I look back at those really long nights, and not to say that I missed them because I was sleep deprived and I hated that, but there's something special in those moments too, and it just gets better. Like, my kid's gonna be 2 years old on Saturday, and at 1 year old, I thought it was the best thing ever. At two, it's even better, and tomorrow will be better than today. And I think being able to really help another human being mold themselves into something great, that's just the ultimate fulfillment. And yeah, I always encourage people to drown out the noise of the horrific things people say about being a parent.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, yeah.
look, it was, you can live selfishly without kids. And I understand why people don't want to have them. And by all means, that's your choice. But I just hope no one bases that decision off of what other people say, because I also think that being a parent is something like, I kind of relate it to like getting tattoos, where people that have them will try to talk about like, oh, how bad it hurt, and like just to kind of prop themselves up a little bit
Yeah. Yeah.
and almost like talk down to others. But I would never want to do that to anyone who is considering being a parent. I hope everybody knows that it is the most rewarding, yes, the most challenging, but there's nothing that will make you feel more loved and love something more than being a parent.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's like I go back to perception is reality, right? If you want to choose to focus on the hard times, if you want to choose to complain about why it doesn't make sense, why it was hard for me, so it's going to be hard for you, then that's your perception. So that's the reality you're gonna live. And if that's your perception on what having kids is like, then maybe that's your decision. But it's also let's choose to focus on the positive. Let's choose to focus on what the beauty is in that dynamic, and how that changes your life for the better. Or else people would stop having kids, right?
Definitely, definitely, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like I said, it's one of those things I always just try to use my platform to explain to people that yes, it's going to be trying times, but at the end of the day, like there's no other way I'd want to live more than just being a dad and having that little crazy boy run around all day. There's
Yeah.
nothing better.
Well, I can tell you that message is well communicated from a listener and from a fan. So very cool watching it. But one, just as we kind of round out the conversation, one question I love asking, just in line with my mission behind Take a Step, which is essentially helping people to discover and take action and start living according to what they feel their true God given purposes and their calling in life. Because I think so many people easily get caught in not wanting to take action for whatever reason, whether that's fear, whether that's it could be fear of failure, fear of criticism from others, judgment, paralysis by analysis, feeling like they don't know exactly what they need to do, so they can't do it until they have the perfect plan. Whatever that looks like, so many people never take action on stepping into what their true passion is because of that fear, whatever that is. So for you, like, why do you think it is so hard for people to step into a life that's in line with their true passion and their purpose?
I think a lot of people live in a way where they are assuming or maybe not thinking through that they are not going to live forever. And for me, I always share this with people. Like, my perception is built on when my mom was extremely sick and I was there with her in her last days. I saw everything about her change because she came to the realization that this is it. And at that moment, I up until that point, I'd kind of lived in a way where I was always basing my actions on what other people thought.
Mm,
And then I got to that point in my life and I was like, this makes no sense because we're all going to be here at one point. And I would hate to look back and say I didn't live for I didn't live out my full desires because of the judgment of others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'll just be honest, like if I didn't go through that experience, I never would have started a YouTube channel, because
Yeah.
that's very, very personal. People judge you. Like, I guarantee you to this day, people still watch the videos just to poke fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what people do.
That was
And
why it took me a year to just create the Instagram page, post my first video, and like consider launching a podcast out of it. It's just like, all right, people are gonna say, what's Josh trying to do? Like, what, like,
yeah,
does he think he's trying to be some creator influencer? Like that's not him. So
yeah.
I resonate with that 100%.
Yeah, and nowadays, like, there's no one I respect more than that random person on TikTok that will be talking like they're a full-time influencer with like 7 followers and 1 like on every post, but they just have that confidence, like, hey, I'm gonna do this. And I respect the heck out of that. Like, they are
Yeah.
truly living for themselves. And I think that's why I have so much joy and like gratification every day, because I truly just do what's best for me. Like, I do, my friends know, like, hey, Travis, he's not going out on the weekends. Like, he doesn't, he just does what he wants to do. Um, and it took me a while to get there. And again, that experience kind of changed the way that I thought. Um, but at this stage in my life, it's like I just live for me and my family.
Yeah.
And the judgment of others, not to say that it never impacts me, but it surely doesn't dictate my actions.
Mm-hmm. I love that because like for me, growing up, my biggest a huge part of my story is growing up. My probably my biggest challenge was living out of the approval of others and like constantly working so hard to get the validation.
Yeah.
And that led to making some horrible decisions, associating with the wrong people. And it led to a life of like endless work to get, cause it's based on a foundation that's always changing. People's opinions will always be changing. My foundation was not firmly planted in who I truly was and who I wanted to be, because I didn't know who I was. And that's, like you're saying, it took finally saying, you know what, who am I trying to become, and how am I going to take action and say, screw the opinions of the world. I'm doing what I want to do because it's the person that I'm building. Like, I'm living my life. And I heard a quote recently. You know who Ryan Serhant is, owning
The
Manhattan?
realtor?
Yeah.
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 Sell it like
He,
Sirhan or something like that. I think I read
yeah,
that book.
sell it like Sirhan is one of his books, but he just came out. He had like $1 million listing was one of his shows, and then he had Netflix just came out with Owning Manhattan. He owned the brokerage, so he has a very unique personality, big personal brand guy, and you have to be bold and have a very charismatic personality to build your brand, and I get that, but. One of the quotes he said that I heard recently that I loved is, "I'd rather regret the things I did than the things I didn't try." Um,
Yeah, I love
and
that.
so it's like I'd rather actually do something because I wanted to and regret doing that because I messed up than having the regret of like, what if I
Sure.
tried that? Like, what would have happened? That's probably one of my biggest fears in life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think true confidence comes from the ability to be yourself. And I think on social media, you see a lot of fake confidence out there because a lot of people are really just trying to fit the mold. And that world, and one of the things I get concerned about is I think people spend a lot of time online and maybe not enough time in the real world, or enough time pursuing the things that they actually want to do. Like, I think a lot of people don't actually want the things that they're working so hard to get. Because if you dedicate your life to making all this money to buy this sports car, my fear for them is you're going to get this car and you're going to feel so empty. And I get really sad when I turn on Instagram or turn on YouTube and it's just consumerism and people buying things and things, and I can tell that they're empty and they're trying to fill that void because I think they're afraid to just be them.
Yeah.
And because sometimes that doesn't sell, like my lifestyle is not meant for social media growth, right?
Yeah.
I just want to hang out with my kid, watch some trash truck, go on a walk, run around the backyard. but that's not what like gets glorified online, right? We don't
Hmm.
take fancy vacations. We don't, go out and buy extravagant things. That's just not who we are. And I think people in today's day and age act in a way to fit that certain image, even if it doesn't give them fulfillment. And I would just really caution people against that, because it's at the end of the day, life is something you only get one of.
Yeah.
And I would just hate for people to not live it on their own terms.
Hmm. So where do you find your fulfillment? What fills your cup that you kind of strive for every day?
One of the things for me is achievement. I love being a top performer. I love um, being at the top of the leaderboard and whatever I'm doing. Um, I love finding success in things, regardless if it's in the gym, at work. Um, I like being proficient enough uh, to add value to others, and that makes me feel really good. And the other thing, of course, is just building a family. I
Hmm.
mean, my wife and I are very, very lucky. I think it's very hard today's day and age to find that one person that you are truly in love with, right? We take it for granted, but
Yeah.
the more and more we see it, and as we get older, you already see people unfortunately splitting up, and you see people in relationships for the wrong reasons. So for me, the fact that I found that one person and we're able to expand our family, that's really incredible, and that gives me more fulfillment than anything I ever thought was possible.
Yeah.
I never, I was so happy being a single guy and just doing my own thing, and I would have been fine with that the rest of my life. But it just expands your heart in a way that you can't even describe to people that haven't lived through it. So like I said, I would have been good, but nowhere near as fulfilled as I am today with a family.
That's awesome. Well, Travis, this has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on, shed some wisdom, shed some light on the Take a Step community, and it's been great. But I'd love for you to tell the people where they can follow along with what you're doing, where they can follow along with the content and the channel that you're growing, both on whether if it's Instagram, YouTube. Where can we follow along?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the stuff is YouTube. So it's if you go to YouTube and type in Travis S or youtube.com/business and fitness. That's where I post the majority of my content, and then some of the day-to-day stuff, I'll post on Instagram as well. And it's just _Travis_S. So look forward to connecting with some of you guys.
Awesome. Well, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to join.
Josh, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Guys, if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a rating or review on whichever platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, or subscribe. And wherever you are in your growth journey, just take a step.